Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Astrologer Eric Rosen here for Viking Rising Astrology. This is your little intro report for what is the astrology going to be like in 2024. Let's get to it, shall we? We're going to be starting this new year with Mercury retrograde. So there's a significance of this, right? I mean, you start a new year, what the planets are doing, it matters. And so the fact that Mercury is going to be retrograde in Sag, we're going to spend a lot of this year kind of like, what the fuck, mentally reviewing like what's going on in the world, what's going on in our personal world, what's going on with our, beliefs, what's going on in foreign cultures, what's gonna, be the big thing that sort of pops this year. This is a crazy year. I mean, especially once we get into the springtime, but even before that, right away in January on the 20th, you have Pluto coming to Aquarius, and it's going to be here for most of the year. So it's like the trumpet call of Capricorn Pluto. It's played its last note. The band is, done playing on the Titanic. The Titanic's going down, in terms of like what is just not a spiritual integrity in terms of the structures of this reality. And so when Pluto comes into Aquarius, it can be power to the people, but depending on the common man's ability to want to empower itself, it can also be, a very destructive element of digging up the bones of where are we not being eccentric in our spiritual power and gifts and understanding? Where are we not forming power groups of people and collaborations and community to take our power back? Because one thing Pluto and Aquarius is going to present is that anyone that tries to stand on themselves alone, it's just destined to fall. It just won't work over this next 20 years. And so although we're not going to have Pluto here the whole year, we're definitely looking at getting a glimpse into how this next 20 years is going to be. When we get into the springtime, April 20th especially, and we're feeling this energy now, but we'll especially feel it building at the end of March, but we're already feeling it now, is going to be that big Jupiter-Uranus conjunction where they meet, and you've got the biggest planet, Jupiter, meeting with Uranus. And so this is where it gets even crazier. I mean, especially when the home of Uranus is Aquarius and you have Pluto there digging up, the tragic things that are just like not going to be like working in for the consensus reality and the agreements that we've made. You kind of get this almost like explosion now of beliefs and people's different value systems and people's I'd say that this is a collective unease for like what's really going on in the world. I think this is where no one's really fully immune to like what's going on. I think the positivity of these transits is create our own communities where we are in fact have a shared common value system of understanding each other, and that there's still an all-inclusive idea of like beliefs of where we can still find at least some common ground to come together and do things and be like, oh, okay, you have this skill set, oh, okay, you have that skill set, okay, great. And this might sound kind of silly to think, why would we even be thinking like this? Why would anything change? And it's just like, well, this is kind of where the playing field starts to level itself a little bit in terms of, physical reality things, of commodities, of basically just, the fact that we need people. We need people to get by. We've always needed people. It's just we've relied on a lot of like the structures outside of us to get us by. And it's like, maybe you don't have to get your DoorDash directly from the person. They could drop it off, or your Amazon package, just as a silly example. But it's like, this whole thing about where we're minimizing contact with people. These are these transits where it kind of puts it in our face a little bit. Are we showing up in our best skill set, in our best value system, embodied, and really putting that out there in the world and being empowered by that? If not, you might get the shock, and it'll be a big one, of Uranus when you see that, if you built your reality to only, be around only your favorite people, and that you're not looking, a little bit more outside of understanding who can you trust that, can share a common vision, that is like a wholesome set of values, people that, aren't there to betray or take from each other, but, that there's also the expression, right? There's the expression of our uniqueness, and just like putting all that stuff on the table. It's no one can really blend in and just be the common man, so to speak, or common woman during this time. It's going to be way more about the understanding that, yeah, if you want to live a life of prosperity, if you still want to have things in a good way, it takes networking. It takes connections. It takes, not having a feeble mindset of, also just like using people or like manipulating or just like trying to, just get by. This is where all these things get exposed. This is like the randomness of the synchronicity of events where, our lives can either unfold in a very beautiful way from all the spiritual efforts that we've been putting in, to things and staying in integrity with that, or it shows us where we're not doing that, or where we've been beating around the bush at being that best expression of ourselves. So it's like, regardless, it's like electricity, it's like a boost in Mario Kart, where it's like the moment you step into the empowerment and your gifts, it doesn't matter what the positioning you feel like it is, it's all a level playing field now, and you can find yourself in powerful, groups of people, and service is a big deal with this, of helping other people and being helped and being supported. And it all just comes from the embodiment. It's not so much of a mental understanding of things. It's just way more of like, you just know it. You feel it at your core. You feel it. You relax into it. It's relaxing into the unknown. It's relaxing into even just the forgiveness of every moment and step that led us here, and whatever the ledger is. It's like, it kind of doesn't matter anymore this year. It's a bit of a divine reset for the soul. And the reason why I think that's a little bit crazy is because no more does it become so much about the haves or have-nots that Pluto and Capricorn has brought up, and the challenges that's been for people with survival, even just on a mental level or a financial level or relational level, whatever the challenges have been. It becomes way more about, okay, even Steven, doesn't matter, whatever the lessons were the lessons. And now we can all work on ascending together. And so this is going to start with showing up your best worth, your self-worth, knowing it, knowing the skill set, knowing what you bring to the table, to the people that you serve, your community, knowing what you need of service to stay empowered, to stay in your best gifts and abilities. This is going to be where it's really at. As Jupiter-Uranus is a huge deal this year. And then by May, you get Jupiter that drifts away into Gemini and is like, okay, I'm done, Taurus. And so Jupiter's weird in Gemini because it's the opposite of its home sign. It's the complete opposite. Jupiter's all about big things, the macro picture. Gemini's all about the little details, the little things. And so this is almost where we could get a little bit kind of massively uncomfortable with the familiar. It's like the familiar ways that we talk. It could be the familiar ways of interacting with our neighbors. It's kind of weird, but it's where the world can kind of feel a little small all of a sudden, and that could be really unpredictable in how that gets experienced, whether or not that's how much of that is physical and how much that is just how we relate to the abstract understanding of our worldview, I think remains to be determined, because Jupiter has to meet with Uranus first, and that's a very unpredictable event and how things shake out in the physical. But what I will say is that, we've got to be mindful about how we communicate our belief systems, Jupiter and Gemini, like that we got to make sure we're not coming across from a crass place, that we're trying to push it, overwhelmingly onto people. It's being a little bit more magnanimous in the verbalization of our vision of our life, of our beliefs, of our experiences, as a way to create the stimulus of conversation with people, to have a good time, to create good social aspects. It's like Jupiter and Gemini is going to be great for creating social connections and connectivity and great positive conversations. But anyone that wants to come from a negative place and they're not coming from more of a neutral hermetic place, that's when, it's like, I don't want to be around this person, and then that sucks, because it's like, can be like the weird guy that feels like he's getting like thrown out of the tribe or something, out of the social circle, just because he doesn't know how to engage. He doesn't know how to socialize. He doesn't know how to like show up in his best self. This kind of brings up in a kind of a weird way, almost like our manners of like how we express things. It's like keep things jovial and positive and like curious, like pretend that you know nothing about the world. Pretend like you're just so excited to learn from people, to learn from other things that you don't know, and to also see when you do learn those things, it's like not to get overwhelmed and to cram it all in your brain for like at a later date. That can happen, but it's more of the original thinking of going, okay, how can I use this here in the moment that serves my present moment reality of the facts of how things are showing up, to not get bombarded by too many facts and understanding and like looking at all the numbers and all this. And it's like, it's going to be hard because this is where people are trying to over identify and see too many patterns happening in their lives or the world or their relationships or, the mental understanding of the world and the philosophy and everybody's beliefs in foreign cultures. And it's like, it's too much, We've got to look way more at just the understanding of like, okay, like what is positive? What are the facts that are positive? Not to falsify the facts, but what is going to advance the vision of my life forward? Give me that understanding. It's like a leader, like getting all this stuff when stuff's happening and things are going down. It's like, well, just give me the bottom line. Like, give me the summary. Give me like the bigger factual details that actually matter in this situation that can be understood to actually take things to a better place. And that can be kind of difficult because, Jupiter and Gemini, it's like first having to like wade through, maybe getting overwhelmed or like misunderstandings at first. We will see Pluto dip back into Capricorn actually on September 1st. It's not going to be there long. By November, it'll come back into Aquarius. And so we will get to revisit that old Pluto and Capricorn paradigm, of this brings up like monarch energy. I think there's going to be a lot going on with like, in England and like some of the European Union stuff. I could see countries like Australia getting, as a part of this. And it's just a lot of stuff where, it could seem like we're in our own little world, Jupiter and Gemini, when Pluto comes back into Capricorn, and all of a sudden it's, maybe what's going on in the world is like a little different than like our usual reality. But I think we still have to pay attention to these things. I especially think that a reminder that Pluto creates the illusion that something is outside of us when really we're witnessing sort of an energetic cosmic mirror of, where we're vibrating at. We're detecting what we're actually seeing. And so what we're seeing in governments and politics during this time, it's going to bring that up again, or, financial structures, or just whatever structure it is that's going on, that maybe the origins of the structure that was built are no longer of service to the collective. And that includes the way that we govern ourselves and our own structures, everything from our own thinking to our work, our schedules, all of it. And that we have to like kind of look at that of going, has this monarch, is this king or queen, like, is this still in integrity? Like, is this way that I, rule my life? Is it still good? Is it still good for me? Chances are it hasn't been good since 2020, because a lot goes back to that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020 that changed the world forever. And that, we're just getting reminded by the Grim Reaper that is Pluto, like, hey, do you want to take this out of your life, or do you want me to do it? Because if I do it, you're just going to wake up one day and it's just not going to be there. And that can be hard. I think that can be soul crushing for some people, depending on, what that thing is. But, Pluto, sometimes the transformation is the wake up, and it taking a little break from Aquarius is a reminder that, it can come as a shock, the transformations. And so I guess the positive, at least in Capricorn, is at least you kind of see it coming. You kind of see the Grim Reaper's plan a little bit. I mean, the writing's been on the wall for a lot of stuff going on in the world and our own lives. It's not stuff that's really taken us by surprise. And so, I think we use this time of Pluto in Aquarius up until from that January 20th day to 2024, until Pluto comes back into Capricorn for a little bit, starting on September 1st, as a way to see a bigger worldview of like, there are power outlets that we can plug into. There are ways that we can go, okay, well, I get a Grim Reaper. I get it. This structure, this way of approaching governing my life is not working. So let me go see, how I can go into situations in the world and with people, especially around community and, just the understanding at a deeper level of the world that tests that sort of innate understanding, the lessons in ourselves that we've been learning, to like make it mean something. It's like, make the hardships that you've been learning in life next year, especially that have been occurring since 2020, mean something. Put it to service. Strap up the bootlaces, put yourself on the lines, the front lines, and not in a way that derails you from your innate value system that at your core, that everything that you learned since 2020 and even maybe before that, 2019, it all depends. Everyone was kind of like, Pluto was waking up people at different rates, and that's what you do. It's like you're putting things in motion. It's like, no longer is it the excuses or the restrictions. Those may still appear to be there, because even when Pluto comes to 0 degrees of Aquarius, like itchy nose tonight, we're still in a gene key gate that still is all about restriction and having to innovate and like rise above that restriction. But at least we can get some electricity going. We can get some juices going to like really be in the innovation and actually more succeeding in the accomplishment of creating the shift, getting more people on our side. This brings up people channeling from deep within themselves their understanding of, the innovation, the change they want to see in the world, where you're being it, you're embodying it from within. And that is why I think we went through a lot of the lessons, a lot of the harshness, a lot of the travesties of that Pluto and Capricorn. It was kind of a boot camp of sorts, believe it or not, a very deep spiritual, mental, emotional boot camp, because it's going to take that level of spiritual, I guess you could say, warriors, or forming dynasties of people that have common knowledge of the occult to help revolutionize the world to a better place and actually use the occult for some good, instead of like knowing that unfortunately there are, powers that be that hide behind the curtains that use the occult for the dark. So by the time we get to the end of the year, mid-December, we're actually going to see a Mars retrograde in Leo. And I gotta say, a Mars retrograde in Leo, Mars is the ruler of war, among other things. And so there's a reason Mars is a planet that takes the longest to retrograde. It takes 2 years. The masculine does not want to give up. It will hold out to its last breath and, keep going until it can. So when it retrogrades, it has to slow down. It has to review. In Leo, this is matters of the heart. This was our ambition blind? Were we just leading from just, this headstrong place, or were we actually coming from more of a courageous place? This can be heartbreaking. This is men. This is our masculine energy for women. All of it just like coming to sort of this interesting, closing cycle of understanding. Was I really pushing in the right space in the last 2 years of my life, or, was I off the mark? Were we really coming from that heart space? Did we really, this could bring up, did we learn how to love ourselves, for where, maybe where we were pushing wasn't the best place and was from like a weaker cowardice place, to try to just guarantee like maybe like our physical safety versus going, nope, this is what the heart is saying. I'm going up into my courage. This is my will. This is my willpower. I'm going for it. This could bring up things with children. This could even bring up, I don't know, it could, this could be a stretch. It could be a war on sex trafficking. It could be, a different way of looking at ways to protect children, because it's Leo, protect our youth. It's ways of looking at how can we be a better character, going forward, especially in the 2025, and going, well, like maybe I was the guy in the movie or the woman in the movie that was scared and just like wanted to hide from the real ambition and just had like some blind ambition or some, had mental health like thing that just wasn't really revolutionizing and going, okay, I'm ready though now. Like I'm ready to, strap up the bootlaces and go in a positive, loving direction to go, okay, like I'm ready. It's like I'm ready to fight energy. It's like the person that was the scared, cowardly one becomes the hero, or the one that looked meek or didn't have the strength to do it. It's like this is where we can become our own heroes and our own journey and our own tale and our own communities and our own, lives, where it's like can be everyday hero energy. I mean, on a collective front, I think it's going to be a shit show by this point, and I think, the fate of where the world is heading, with Pluto in Aquarius is a little bit of like, anyone's guess. Even me as an astrologer, I can just tell you that I think that things are going to, work out in a positive way. It's just, we've got to have the belief. We can't let our thoughts derail us, our negative thoughts take us down, an overwhelmingly piss poor thinking path and thinking that it's all going to go bad. I think we just have to look at, it goes back to the innateness of the human spirit. It goes back to the strength and will of the heart. It goes to looking at, starting with the basics of looking at our thoughts, like looking at like, what is the vibe? What's the frequency that we're really putting out into the collective with just our everyday thinking, our behaviors. This is not a time to, I think, be lazy. I really, especially that Jupiter Uranus, it's like not a time to be lazy. It's like, I think the positive thing of like Pluto leaving Capricorn is maybe we can get a little bit of, even if we don't feel like juice in the tank, where maybe there's been a form of exhaustion, that at least we can go, okay, well, let me find a space to, recharge my batteries and see that the recharge can look like even just the excitement of what can come next, but that's still going to require, where are we putting our thoughts? Where are our behaviors going? What are the actions that we're taking? These things are going to get magnified next year to where, if you look at the man or woman in the mirror, it's like our self-worth, the value, what we're receiving back in terms of anything, whether it's, relationships, business, finance, health, what we're receiving back, it's going to be really easy to look at it and see it as direct in proportion to what is the vibrational value that we're putting into the collective. I think with Pluto and Capricorn, it was a little bit easy for us to put the issues out into some, other power, like in the world, that was like over top of us as the reason for our disempowerment or unhappiness. But again, this is a level playing field energy. And so we have to sort of assess and look in the mirror, or look at the people that are in our everyday lives and in our communities, and see, are we looking at them as positive or negative? What's the elevation? Do you feel less than these people? Do you feel above them? And if so, why? And finding ways to close that gap through the psychological understanding that if that's what you're putting out into the world, is that you're better than someone or that you're less than someone, what is that doing to your frequency? We need people this year that are empowered, that are making change, making a difference. If you've watched this video this far in, I think some of you are probably looking at ways to grow your skill set or express your sense of leadership. And I'm just here to tell you, from the divine masculine understanding of this, you just have to go and do it. It's not about getting it right. It's not about getting it perfect. It's not about whether you fall or don't fall. You're probably going to fall. You're probably going to trip. The positive thing, though, is that when you're putting that surrendered sense of spirit forward and saying, yeah, spirit, give me a bat. I will go up there even if I'm not sure what I'm doing. And you do fall, you do fail. You're going to have people around you to support you. But if, you want to hermit, you still want to hide, you don't want to be a part of the show going down in 2024, well, guess what? A hermit doesn't have anyone when they fall down. Like you fall down, you hurt you break your hip. It's like, your lifeline was meant to be you putting yourself in a place where you're not just hanging out in your usual environments and, having some type of like, fear of the foreign, like in your life, and to actually go into this more positive space is going to look like, okay, like, let me slowly expand my comfort zone and the horizons and the boundaries of the type of people I let into my life, and see that maybe quality can be more defined in the understanding of, is there utility? Can we create and keep going together to like innovate, not even so much of like this year of like things maybe on the outside, but more the human intellect. This is evolution. This is the evolving human, our intuition. It's evolving the human spirit. That's where the innovation is at. And it's only going to come from more connections with people. It doesn't mean let everyone in or become dependent on others or try to lord over others. It has to do more with like, what is the value that we're getting back, I think, of the spiritual, upgrade and understanding, because there's a deep level of surrender that comes with that, and understanding that, there is a level of unpredictability in certain things that we cannot control in the world. And so at the end of the day, it's like, what do you have? To me, God's providence is our vibration. It is what we're putting into our vortex. And so you can take the Abraham Hicks route and you can, think positive all day long, but the way to know if it's really working, things like law of attraction and manifestation, is going to be, are you actually bringing more people into your life? Is your community growing, or are you feeling isolated more? Because if you're feeling more isolated, there might be a spiritual part of you, your psyche, your reality that you're avoiding going to. You got to go outside the comfort zone. Got to make it happen this year. This is the moment for anyone who's like kind of been sort of on the sidelines in terms of your spiritual expression, of putting your gifts out into the world, of making an impact, of making a difference. If you're kind of like thinking about getting in there, it's a free-for-all. Just jump in, just go do something this year. If you're someone that's already doing it, fuck yeah, keep going. See where you can innovate, see where you can shift and pivot and make changes, and don't, fall for, like, whether it's like with still Neptune finishing up in Pisces and coming into Aries here too this year, it's like, hey, just, don't go down that well. Don't go down that rabbit hole. Don't get sucked down the media, place, and see that it's like, okay, like we can revolutionize our understanding of, what it means to just be human and just show up and love one another and support each other, and not point fingers and say how we got here and keep track of the ledger. It can be much more beautiful than that if we come to a gentle place of understanding, compassion, and love for one another. Speaking of love, if you would like to get a relationship astrology reading, pop into that link in that bio. Would love to support you and your partner. Love is going to be a big deal going forward in terms of romantic unions, of power couples, of business partnership relations. As I mentioned in this horoscope, we cannot do it alone. So why would you try? All right. I love you all. And if I don't record another video before 2024, I will see you on the other side of that New Year's portal. Love you all. Take care.